main categories of landscape, which is the natural landscape and the artificial landscape. Natural landscape. Natural landscapes are landscapes beyond cultural influence which is unaffected by human activity. A natural landscape is intact when all living and non-living elements are free to move and change. A natural landscape may contain either the living or non-living or both. The examples of natural landscape are coastal landscape. Coastal is a zone where the land meets the sea or some other large expanse of water. It enhances visual appeal of your coastal property, preservation of the natural character of the coastal environment, habitat for wildlife, a filter for pollution, and a natural protection from storm damage and erosion. Next is the marine landscape. Marine landscape approach should be adopted as a key element for marine nature conservation and utilized in a spatial planning and the management of the marine environment. Other examples include hillside landscape and forest landscape. Artificial landscape. The term built environment refers to the human-made surroundings that provide the setting for human activity, ranging in scale from personal shelter and buildings to neighborhoods and cities, and can often include their supporting infrastructure such as water supply and energy networks. Examples of artificial landscape are memorial landscape. Memorial landscapes were designed to remember those who lost their lives. Other than that, there are parks. Parks usually consist of facilities for recreation purposes such as playgrounds, ice skating rinks, and walking tracks. Next is highway landscape. Highway landscape is designed to improve the contribution of state highways to the environmental and social well-being. Highway landscaping has specific requirements that requires careful consideration at design, including road safety requirements, maintenance considerations, plant selection, plant types, plant establishment, planting design, cost consideration, and using earthworks. Other examples include waterfront landscapes, golf course landscapes, and skyline landscapes. The origin of the garden. Gardens are enclosures of land for pleasure and delight. Most of the major religions describe gardens as the paradise at the beginning of life and the end of life on earth. In addition to the symbolism attached to gardens, early civilization attributed special meaning and significance to certain trees and plants. The strong myth and legend were influential in the early civilization, such as the Garden of Eden in which God placed Adam and Eve. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon. The Hanging Gardens are said to have stood on the banks of Euphrates River in the modern-day Iraq. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon occupied 4 acres and to have risen in a series of planted and irrigated roof terraces to a height of 300 feet. Chinese Garden. The Chinese word for landscape, san sui, means mountain and water. Chinese gardens attempted to recreate natural landscape by applying the concept of yin-yang to achieve a harmonious balance of nature. There are 2 main forms of Chinese gardens. Firstly, there are the imperial gardens. The imperial gardens were built as a setting for summer palaces of imperial families, consisting of forests, streams, lakes, islands, often stocked with exotic plants and animals, frequently furnished with bright pavilions and bridges for the amusement of royal party. The second form, which is the smaller private gardens. Smaller private gardens which are attached to the town dwellings and suburban villas. It is an enclosed garden used for a variety of purposes such as recreation, rest, study, meditation, and appreciation of the processes and aesthetics of nature. Privacy and silence are essential. Symbolism was prevalent in every feature and in the arrangement. Water as a balance to land was essential for perfect harmony. Rock contained all creative forces of Tao and symbolic of wilderness and mountain. Plants symbolize man's life in universe. Japanese garden. The early garden forms which were adopted by nobles were heavily influenced by religious beliefs, symbolism, and Chinese influence in varying proportions. Meditation was the garden's chief purpose. The importance of Zen Buddhism in the Kamakura period brought about new concepts to life. The Royan-ji, which is a dry Zen garden. In temples, dry gardens act as a place to find spiritual peace. It is a small, enclosed, inward-looking garden made of simple materials conducive to meditation. The second type is the stroll garden. The idea of stroll gardens was the creation of a series of views and experiences in the garden. It resembled the gardens in China, but the route to be followed was more clearly prescribed. It followed a clockwise route around an irregularly shaped lake and was laid out with bends and turns in relation to planting and topography. The Islamic garden. Water was the essential feature of the garden for cooling and symbolic purposes. The organization was axial and geometric. Trees were planted to provide fruits and to shade from the hot sun. Normally, a large geometric pool would be placed at the center of the garden. There would be a raised pavilion, house, or even a palace with an open form of architecture, providing free flow of air and an intimate relationship between indoors and out. Ruling classes and royal families used the gardens as settings for indulgence in poetry and music, horticultural pursuits, and for festivals and reception. Examples of Islamic garden is the Persian Islamic garden. The Persian Islamic garden focuses on open relationship between the garden and the architecture with the presence of water. Examples of the Persian Islamic garden is the Humayun Tomb complex. Another example of Islamic garden is the Spanish version of Islamic garden. The examples of Spanish version of Islamic garden is the Court of Linos and the Court of Myrtles in Alhambra, Spain. The gardens was enclosed in courtyard surrounded by buildings. The formal garden in England. Influenced by the French garden with the rigid forms that superimpose on the undulating English agricultural landscapes. Parches, which are flower beds and paths that are arranged to form a pattern, were laid out within an architectural framework. There were also formal pools and elaborate waterworks. However, the French formal garden did not fit well with the open landscape in England. The landscape garden, England. Influenced by the Romantic movement, which based on the direct observation of nature and principles of painting. To fit in with undulating contours, the formal parterre and terrace were replaced with rolling grassland, clumps of trees, lakes, meandering rivers, and serpentine drivers. The scene was embellished with temples, bridges, and sculptures. The technique of using sunken fence was to eliminate the visual break between garden and landscape, allowing the eye to see straight out to the countryside. If you are interested in designing a garden, there are two different styles of gardens, which is the formal garden and the informal garden. Here is the comparison of the formal and informal garden. The definition of formal garden is a garden laid out on regular lines with plants arranged in symmetrical locations or in geometrical designs. Whereas for informal garden, it is a garden that is often structured using flowing lines to create contours and irregularity and softness within the space. Formal gardens follow straight geometrical lines, whereas informal gardens follow natural terrain or curved lines. The shape of the formal garden is rigid and follows orderly form without overlapping each other, whereas for the informal garden it follows organic shapes, spirals, diagonals, and interlocking rectangles. Formal garden integrates with adjacent buildings and is more private, whereas informal garden integrates with surrounding landscape. Small garden. Definition of small garden is an extremely limited garden space both physically and psychologically. It is often a small garden space tend to be more formal in that they are based on geometric shapes to link with the house. There is no lawn but clean lines of paving and path. Scale and simplicity are both key issues for small gardens. The need for privacy is also an important consideration for small gardens. The examples for small garden is firstly, the Bauhaus-inspired garden by Yun Sun Chun. The dimension of the garden is 6 by 6 meters. Key features are suspended pergolas, low benches. The brief states, due to restricted space, the design had to maintain a level of simplicity and to use restricted color and planting palette. Earth colors and terracotta shades were used to create a warm and comfortable atmosphere. The second example is the Sunken Garden by Belston & Co., which is a formal garden. The dimension of the garden is 38 square meters. The key features of the garden is semicircular retaining walls, water fountain. The brief states to create a small urban garden that is largely decorative. Privacy was an important issue. A semicircular retaining wall with fixed seat formed the transition between two levels and the upper one providing the planting area. The lower part was enclosed by the surrounding properties and overlooked. The third example is a minimalist urban garden by Helen Billertop Garden Design, which is an informal garden. The key features of the garden is a deck and a natural slate bench. The brief states to create a simple and modern garden to reflect the minimalist and stylish interior of a townhouse. The timber deck was occupied the center of the garden and added a level. A natural slate bench provided sculptural interest and focal point from the house. The fourth example is a split-level garden. Key features of the garden is decks and ponds. The brief states the garden was designed on 2 levels. The lower deck was for seating, directly accessing from the dining room a small ornamental pond and a minimalist planting of bamboos and fern with large rocks and pebbles cutting into the deck. Wide steps led to the upper garden where a circular pond discharges water via a narrow channel and shoot to a lower pond. Conservatory garden. A conservatory garden is a greenhouse, especially one in which plants are arranged aesthetically for display as at a botanical garden. Physical requirements of plants. Firstly, light. Skylight. Advantage of encouraging plants to grow upwards towards the light. Skylight and consideration. Skylights and plants are more effectively related if they are not aligned in a plan but aligned for an angle of the sun to hit the plants. Bulkhead. A minimal distance from ceiling to skylight frame will permit a more direct path for the daylight. Ceiling opening. If the ceiling opening is larger than the skylight opening, the area influenced by the brightness from the skylight will be extended. Planting methods. Firstly, the built-in planters. Here are the components for built-in planters: mulch, outer container, wire mesh, pot, drainage layer, and drain. Secondly, there is the 3-pit planting method. Here are the components for the 3-pit planting method: siphon tube, tree grade, mulch, scupper, planting medium, soil separator, and drainage layer. The first example of conservatory gardens is the St. Paul Como Park, the Sunken Garden. The Sunken Garden offers beautiful floral shows updated seasonally. This ever-changing display is as artful as it is fragrant, perfect for romantic walks or for a curious exploration. Enjoy amazing azaleas and festive poinsettias in winter, multicolored tulips in spring, prize roses and geraniums in summer, and cherry chrysanthemums in autumn. This sunken garden is of formal style and high maintenance. Secondly is Gardens by the Bay, the Flower Dome. It is a cool, dry conservatory. The Flower Dome replicates the cool, dry climate of Mediterranean regions like South Africa, California, and parts of Spain and Italy, home to a collection of plants from deserts all over the world. It showcases the adaptations of plants to arid environments. Stop and smell the flowers in the colorful changing displays of the flower field, which reflects different seasons, festivals, and themes. Thirdly, the Gardens by the Bay, the Cloud Forest. It is a cool, moist conservatory. Enter the cloud forest, a mysterious world veiled in mist, entirely different from the flower dome, a 35-meter-tall mountain covered in lush vegetation shrouding the world's tallest indoor waterfall, showcases plant life from tropical highlands up to 2,000 meters above sea level. What is a vertical garden? A vertical garden is a living wall or a green wall which is self-sufficient vertical garden that are attached to the exterior or interior of a building. Vertical gardens are available in various sizes, which it can be very small by using recycled bottles for planting and hanging up on the wall, in medium size which everyone can do it yourself at your own home's wall. It also can be as big as to be installed on the building's wall. They differ from green facades, for example ivy walls, in the plant's roots in the structural support which is fastened to the wall itself. The plants receive water and nutrients from within the vertical support instead of from the ground. Plants for vertical garden do not suitable grows very vigorously or that develops a large complicated root system as the vertical garden will have trouble supporting it. There are many different plants that will thrive in a vertical garden, but some that have been known to do well include strawberries, tomatoes, lettuces, climbing roses, miniature roses, daisies, and ferns. Construction method. Firstly, choose a wall. For vertical garden building advice, what plants should you choose will depend on what wall you pick and how much sunlight it receives. Secondly, build a frame. The basic structure of a vertical garden wall is a 3-layer sandwich made of frame, plastic sheeting, and fabric. Build the whole setup before hanging it, while you can actually attach it directly to a wall. Thirdly, attach a sheet of plastic to the frame. The plastic acts as a backing for the fabric layer, plus keeps the water off the wall. Fourthly, attach the layer of fabric to the frame. The fifth step is to set up an irrigation system. To keep plants growing on a vertical surface, you will need an irrigation system that can provide moisture throughout the fabric layer. The sixth step is to add a fertilizer injector and to attach irrigation system to water source. The seventh step is to choose your plants. As with any gardening, take into account sun, shade, humidity, wind, and cold when choosing plants that you're going to leave outside all year. The eighth step is to insert plants. To insert plants into the outer layer of the fabric, use a razor blade to make a horizontal cut in the material. Get as much soil off the plant's root ball as possible and insert it into the cut. Using a staple gun, insert 3 to 5 stainless steel staples to attach the cloth to the plastic backing in the semicircular around the root ball, creating a secure envelope. Examples of vertical garden are Capital Land in Singapore and Penny House in Sarawak. Rooftop garden. Rooftop garden is a green space created by adding layers of growing medium and plants on top of a traditional roofing system. The construction and success of a system depends on the specific needs and condition of site. Rooftop gardens help mitigate the negative impacts of the cities on the environment by conserving energy and water, improving air and water quality, becoming a source of local food production, providing habitat restoration, and creating natural retreats. A roof garden is any planted open space intended to provide human enjoyment or environmental enhancement, which is separated from the earth by a building or other structure. Construction method. The bottom layer is the roof construction. The roof construction must have a waterproofing layer that is durable enough to safeguard the structure over time with minimal maintenance. Above the waterproofing layer is the drainage layer. Above the drainage layer is the moisture retention protection mat that retains a portion of the precipitation for future plant usage. Next is a filter fabric mat which is installed to prevent soil particles from entering the drainage layer. The next layer consists of a soil medium. The depth of the soil medium depends on the type of green roof under construction. Some layers have drainage channels that allow excess precipitation to collect and drain. The final step for the whole process is the selection and installation of vegetation. Vegetation should be chosen for its ability to thrive in local climate, withstand the harsh conditions of a roof, and imitate the surrounding landscape's diversity. The The examples of rooftop garden is the Chicago City Hall rooftop garden and the rooftop garden in Nac Hotel in Sabah.